What up, world? It's Fess of Reverb, back in my home studio with the new Nanobox Lemondrop by 1010music. This is an amazing compact granular synthesizer with so many cool features. I want to share 5 of the coolest things that I think really make this new release by 1010music an amazing little synth. So let me just stop rambling and let's just jump right into it. All right, so let's just run through the basics. So as soon as you fire this up, you're presented with the home screen. And to navigate your oscillators in the home screen, all you do is just hit one of these audio samples right here. And this is your oscillator section. So in the oscillator section, you have all parameter controls that you would want for your oscillators. And these are your granular oscillators, or granulators as they're calling them. So when you're here, you could also hit that audio sample again and explore different sample options in that particular granular oscillator that you're working with. And then if you want to get to the second granular oscillator, you just hit the stack button right here. And now you're in granular oscillator 2. And then you hit that again, and you're in the regular triangle core oscillator that is also on here. And you get full parameter control there as well. And of course, with it being a triangle oscillator, you have triangle, saw, square, sine, and a noise source, which is really cool. So back to the home screen, filters. You have 2 filters that could be run in series or parallel. And we have all of our filter types: low pass, high pass, band pass, and a notch filter. And resonance control over all these filters. Back to the home screen, we have 2 envelope generators for both granular oscillators. We got 2 LFOs that can be assigned to lots of different places. And then we have this modulation sequencer, not to be confused with a note sequencer. It's meant to sequence modulation, but there is so much modulation that can be done here that combining this with the macro XY controller, it can lead to lots of really wild and weird possibilities. And it's just a testament to how deep this synth is. But more on that later. And also we have two effects generators that you can choose up to 6 effects. Your flanger and distortion, chorus, and phaser on 1 effects. Effects 2 is our time-based effects, where you can choose reverb or delay. These are 1010's amazing effects generators. So if you have any 1010 modules like the Bitbox or Blackbox, you know just how good these effects are. And that's really cool because you can also take advantage of the line in input to run any external sound source to the effects generator, or just start granulizing external sound sources, which is another thing that I'm going to get into later. But the really cool thing right when you're on the home screen and when you start playing notes, I'm hooked up to a circuit tracks MIDI'd up through the MIDI in here off screen. But when you start playing notes on here, you notice all of the visual feedback that you get on not only the grains itself, which is what these lines are indicating, but also on what's happening with your filters, what's happening with your envelopes, what's happening with your LFO, the rate that it's moving at. So lots of visual feedback to work with. And that's really cool and really needed because this thing is really deep and things can get complex really fast, especially when you start adding in the modulation sequencer. But those are the basics. Let's just dive right into some of my favorite features about the Lemondrop. So the first feature that I think makes this Nanobox Lemondrop amazing is its onboard virtual keyboard controller. If you're on our home screen here and you hit the stack button, that will take you to the virtual keyboard controller to where your notes are laid out on a grid, sort of reminiscent to a Launchpad or the circuit tracks, which is what I actually have this MIDI'd up to. So when you're on here, of course, you could start playing notes. And what's really cool is that you can put hold on and build sustained chords, which is really great for drones and stuff like that. And to make that even cooler, we can change the scale that's laid out on our virtual controller. When you're on the screen, just hit the right key, and now you can change the scale. They got lots of scales loaded on here: chromatic, major, major pentatonic, minor, minor pentatonic, even some exotic scales. Let's go to my favorite, minor pentatonic, and then you can change the root note, of course. And the notes available on the virtual controller reflects what scale you're in. So of course, minor pentatonic, you only got 5 steps in your pentatonic scale, so you only have 5 available notes here before you're at the next octave. And of course, you could change the octave of the controller, either going lower or higher by just hitting these directional buttons here on the touchscreen. Yeah, so this virtual controller is really cool, especially if you're just trying to pop this thing out during a live performance and not really have it take up too much real estate on your performing table or at your studio in the house. Even if you want to just build some quick chords to make like some droning pads and whatnot, this is perfect for that. But of course, you could also take advantage of the MIDI input and use a MIDI controller when you want to get more expressive and do a bit more playing and have more control, even over the modulation with using like a mod wheel on a keyboard controller or something to that degree. So yeah, this virtual keyboard controller is really cool, and I think it's one of the cool things about this new Nanobox Lemondrop. So the second really cool thing about the Nanobox Lemondrop, in my opinion, is this macro XY controller. This will be very familiar to people that have had a Chaos pad, and that's exactly what inspired the layout of this controller. And it's really cool because you could take any of these presets, start playing around with them, and just do slight finger gestures just to figure out the sweet spots in that preset that you're working with. And this is all completely mappable, hence the term macro XY. Lots of these parameters can be mapped to the XY controller. In fact, if you're on something like the filter, for instance, anytime that you see these 3 little boxes right here or right here next to any parameters, that means that it's mapped to the actual XY controller of sort. Just on this filter cutoff parameter, for instance, its source for the cutoff is the actual X from the XY controller. So when I'm moving my finger side to side, I'm affecting the filter cutoff. And let's go to resonance. When you're on any one of these parameters and you see those boxes, you could just hit the right key and it will show you where it's mapped to. So the resonance is also mapped to the source. To the X of the XY controller. So I'm affecting this whole filter 1 here, cutoff and resonance, when I'm moving my finger side to side. Let's go to filter 2. So filter 2 is like the same way. Like we got 2 low pass filters here set at different frequencies, and probably has different. Wow, so filter 2 is actually more assigned to the actual up and down part of this macro XY. And you hear it. And that's just really, really cool, especially for performing and just playing along with like another MIDI keyboard to the side of you, like I'm doing right here. I just showed filter parameters that were mapped, but there are amplitude envelope parameters that are mapped here. Well, they aren't mapped, but they can be mapped. Anytime one of these boxes is filled, first of all, these boxes, again, these are showing what's possible to be mapped either on the XY controller or on the modulation sequencer. And if you do have parameters mapped, then like the filter, it will show the boxes will actually be filled with yellow to indicate that they're mapped somewhere. So the third thing that I think makes this Nanobox Lemondrop really cool, it's actually something that encompasses lots of various things under it, but I wanted to group them all together because it's the really cool thing about this granular synth. One of the main controls in granular synthesis that is common throughout most granular synthesizers and modules that you see out there is density. And increasing the density basically increases the amount of grains taken, or just like micro snapshots of sound. So if you increase the density on this Lemondrop here and you start playing, you see how it's taking more grains. You see that visually because these lines here indicate the actual grains that are being taken, and they actually also indicate where in the sample they're being taken from if you look very closely. Now I can keep going down and I can control the actual size of these actual grains. So the larger the size, the more of that sample you're going to actually hear when it granularizes it. You also have what they're calling window here, which like it controls the length of the file on either side of the playback position from where the grain is playing. It's best to just start adjusting it so you can hear its effect. Then we also have what they're calling jitter. And jitter controls like how much randomness is applied to the timing of the grains and how the grains are played back. So obviously there are a lot of parameters you can get into that pertain specifically to the granular engine in here. And I haven't even really gone through all of them. There are a few more that you could select, like detuning the actual attack of the grains. Also, you could have your grains selected in patterns. If you're actually using a more harmonic sample, you could change how the grains are played back in octaves or fifths. There's a lot of different things. So the fourth coolest thing about this Nanobox Lemondrop is the fact that you could turn on beat sync, which is just basically a rhythmic sync of practically all the parameters in here, especially the way that the grains are made. And this is really, really, really cool for making beats and performing with this thing. So beat sync is really cool because all of those granular controls that I was showing you, they now have a different reaction to them and more of a time-based reaction to it when you turn on beat sync. That, of course, stays in time with whatever MIDI clock that you're feeding it. Using beat sync to control the speed of how your grains are generated, that's something that's really, really unique about this Lemondrop. Definitely makes it stand out in the field of granular synthesizers for sure. The fifth coolest thing that I think is amazing about this Nanobox Lemondrop is the line input. And you can run any audio source that you want through this thing, including Eurorack level. It also accepts stereo feeds from stuff like an iPhone or iPad or your laptop, whatever. And there is two ways that you could go about making use of the external line in. You could just turn up your line through. If you're at the home screen, hit the left key. This is your like main parameter screen. You can go down here, turn up this line through so you can actually hear. And when you turn up your external sound source this way, it goes directly to the audio out, of course, and also to the effects generator. So I could use this as an effects processor. And of course, if you have your effects mapped to the macro XY, now you kind of got a chaos pad type effects processor that can be used in conjunction with the actual synthesizer. So when you actually choose to use an external sound source as your second granular oscillator, you still have access to all the other granular controls that I was showing you. And of course, you still have control over the envelope, because this second envelope is to the second granular oscillator, and if the second granular oscillator is your external sound source, then you get amplitude, an amplitude envelope for how those grains are being played back. Now let's actually go and combine our line through with the granular sample buffer so you can really hear what it's doing. And let's control our grain size a little bit. And make it jitter. So that is really cool. That is my external sound source coming in I could also still run my external sound source through the effects in conjunction with the granular samples that are granulizing live as we speak. So there you have it. 5 of my coolest features of the Nanobox Lemondrop. Hopefully you see why I think this thing is so cool, especially at its size and at the price tag. I really think it is a very powerful granular synth that is both budget friendly and doesn't take up too much real estate on the table. What I also know about 1010music is that they constantly update their firmware. Anything that I didn't cover that you think should be added, if you get on their forums, chances are Aaron from 1010 will probably add it in the next firmware update. They are very, very responsive to the community on their devices. And it's just one of the coolest things about all 1010music devices, and the Lemondrop is no exception. Well, there you have it. 5 really cool things that I think are amazing about the new Nanobox Lemondrop by 1010music. And if you want to learn more about the other Nanobox that was released, the Fireball, be sure to click the link below and read up on that at Reverb News. Well, that's all I got for y'all today. I'm Fess Grandiose, signing off of Reverb. As always, stay safe and keep creating. And I'm about to get back to making some beats with this Lemondrop. Peace.